The SS Great Britain, launched in 1843 and designed by one Isambard Kingdom Brunel. It's ironclad and steam driven. Nothing remarkable about that for the time she was launched. But what is different, that lies below. And this was the difference. A 16-foot diameter propeller. When she was launched in 1843, the SS Great Britain was the largest, strongest, fastest ship ever built. She was the greatest experiment since the creation. She had an extremely long working life. She sailed around the world 32 times. That's more than 1 million miles at sea. But finally, in 1886, she limped badly damaged into the Falkland Islands, where she remained for 127 years, abandoned and forgotten. The ship was deemed of such historical importance that in 1970, a decision was made to bring her back to Bristol, where she had been built 127 years earlier. The SS Great Britain now rests in the very dry dock where Brunel built her. She is quite literally home and dry. But the iron hull is vulnerable to corrosion, and corrosion takes place when the wrought iron hull comes into contact with the water. To see how the hull is being preserved, we need to go below the waterline into the original dry dock where she was built in 1843. The hull is now completely encased inside this glass roof structure, and special equipment helps to reduce the humidity to a minimum. You can see why looking after the hull is a constant battle with the elements. The amount of humidity in the Bristol air can be as high as 80 to 100%. However, this curtain of dry, warm air helps to keep the humidity to around 20%.
Right, I will touch this iron ship. Cold, really cold because it's iron. Not wood, not like wood, which is warm. More damage on this side. I wonder what that is.
Yeah.
The upper part of the hull, above the glass plate, is not so badly affected by corrosion. It does not need the same kind of dehumidification treatment as the lower part of the hull. Instead, 2 coats of special anti-corrosion paint protection is all that the iron hull needs. You pass through the museum before you board the Great Britain. It gives you a brief insight into maritime life of the Victorian era. You can
Steer a ship. Steady as she goes. Study the latest technology of the time. Ring a bell with no dong inside it. Meet the crew and become a passenger ready to board your trip to New York or even Australia. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you. Where's my drink?
The upper deck of the ship looks more or less the same now as it did in 1845, when the very first excited passengers went aboard at the start of their voyage to New York. Brunel designed her as a sail-assisted steamship. Basically, this means she relied mostly on the engine, but if the winds were favourable, she could also use the sails, thus saving fuel.
Me, in a former life. Bit steep. The leading line. It's a bit cold up here. It's catching the wind up here. Oh. Over right from the rolling sea.
Finishing all of this right tonight, okay?
Okay. I think we could be here for a long time. They're stuck, these are. These are glued, those aren't. There. Looks like I have to hang myself. Oh no, don't do that. That's what they did. Fasty.
This engine was the heart of Brunel's ship. Everyone on board could hear and feel the motion as it pounded away. In 1843, this was the world's most powerful maritime engine. It was designed by Thomas Guppy, working closely with Brunel on an idea developed by Brunel's father. The power and the sheer scale of the engine fascinated passengers, who took full advantage of the chief engineer's guided tours.
Tell you what I'll do. Think of a new way to drive a ship. I'll just build one next.
The iron hull also affected the navigation equipment. The last thing the captain and the first officer wanted was an opinionated passenger.
I don't like to ask this, but are we on the right course? Get out of here.
The SS Great Britain was designed as a deluxe passenger ship for the route between Bristol and New York. The Promenade Saloon was a playground for the passengers who were able to pay for first class and luxury travel. Here they could walk, dance and socialise without having to get wet or windswept on the upper deck. The doors on either side of the Promenade Saloon lead to first class passenger cabins. Each cabin contained 2 bunks, a wash basin and a candle lamp. Fear of fire at sea meant that the ship's officers controlled the use of candles very strictly. Lights had to be out by 10 o'clock. En route to Australia, the ship was at sea for 60 days. There was no chance to buy supplies during the voyage, so all the food and fresh water needed had to be on board before the ship left port. There were different storerooms on board for dry and tinned goods, vegetables and cooked meats and cheese. An icehouse kept meat fresh for several days after the ship left port. When this ran out, there were hundreds of poultry, pigs and sheep crammed into pens on the top deck. A butcher shop nearby on the deck prepared the carcasses for the kitchen. On a typical voyage, the staff of this galley included 10 cooks, 2 bakers, 2 butchers and a storekeeper.
A lovely smell of freshly cooked bread. Ooh, lovely. Where do they get that? Where do they get that? It must be like smell-o-vision somewhere. Excuse me, what are we having for our meal tonight?
If you were lucky enough to be able to afford first class, a typical meal on board would consist of soup, grouse, pigeon, veal pies, pork, ham, beef, chicken, puddings and tarts, desserts of jelly, blancmange and cakes.
Did you enjoy your dinner? Yeah, I think she did. I think she did.
In reality, most passengers on board travelled third class, or steerage as it was known. Here life was very different from those lucky enough to be travelling upstairs in first class. Cramped and poorly ventilated, you just hoped that you got on with your neighbours okay. This boat was converted to go to Australia. How would you fancy living here in one of these bunks for 63 days?
Not a lot.
Is that it?
So good ask.
So there you have it, the SS Great Britain. We've seen the highs and lows, survived the storm. She was the creation
of an expert team of engineers, shipbuilders and professional seamen. But without this one man's vision, she would never have been created in the first place.